Great, Russ. Thanks for being here.
Great, fantastic. Well, good morning, everyone. And boo, this is the day, right? This is the day for exciting trick-or-treaters. And so we're going to get right into it. I just want to welcome everyone back to the 2025-26 academic year. This is our first gathering, our fall gathering of this particular group as we sort of investigate and encourage partnerships to occur with adult education and our Minnesota State faculty and staff around Co Req experiences for underprepared students. And so we have an ambitious schedule. We have lots to sort of get into today. But as we're doing that, I think the first thing we'd like to do is if you
Oh,
are
sorry.
if you are new to the group, when you are introducing yourself, and everyone, please do this in chat. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat function. You just click on that, and essentially, we'd like to have you indicate your first name, last name, the organization or the school that you are representing or part of, and your role. And then if you are new, just simply say, I'm new. And that'll give us a sense of if we have new people in, maybe a little additional information that we would need to share with especially you new folks. And so I am Russ Fraenkel. Yes, I am one of the facilitators. I joined Lesley Blicker. We've been at this business for a while. She'll tell you more about that in a second. And with that, we're going to just get right after it. And so I'm going to introduce Lesley, who is going to kind of take it from here, and we'll be kind of doing this back and forth thing with you today.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. Happy fall. And as Russ did everything, the most I have are pumpkin earrings and a little orange. Can't get too creative. Yeah, I'm still curious if there's anyone for whom this is their first meeting. And Julie, sorry, no audio. Let's see. I'm not seeing anything, but if there is anyone who pops up as new in the chat, would one of you let me know? Because in part, I modify what I talk about a little bit just by way of introducing the history of this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
and similarly, Lesley, I'm looking at us and I'm seeing a lot of familiar names. So
okay, good.
yeah,
And I just saw Tony Dunlop. Welcome back, Tony. It's wonderful to have you here and everyone else. Okay, well, here's our agenda. Of course, Russ sent it out last week. So we always try to leave at least about a half an hour for conversation because it seems like a lot of these updates and what's happening can generate a fair amount of conversation. So I'm going to head into it right away. So each fall at our first meeting, we give a very brief history just in case there are people returning or brand new. But as Russ said, we've sort of been at this for a while since actually just about when COVID started, which was in February or March of 2020. And we found we were working primarily out of the Northwest Consortium, who had hired us to see if there was an opportunity to expand DevEd ABE partnerships back then. We found I would say a very avid statewide interest in people coming together beyond the Northwest, corner of the state. And so thus we formed this group and it's been going ever since. However, I mean, even though the group we were able to develop some resources and have a web presence and all of that, and help partnerships who wanted to sort of mature, be able to talk to other partnerships and see what practices they had used. It shifted obviously in 2023 as Minnesota State, the system decided to move or initiate a planning effort to replace the standalone DevEd courses with the co-requisite format. So that's what we're focusing on strictly. Now, what we've been doing for the last year or two is Russ and I are maintaining contact with Anthony Miller, who is the system director for the P20 unit at Minnesota State in the system office. And of course, we invite not only ABE folks to the table here, but also Minnesota State folks, especially those who might be working in Co Req already. So what we're trying to do is a similar notion of forming a community. It's a voluntary community of people who want to come together and share what they're doing. And we now have a couple years behind us where some colleges are a little bit further ahead, especially with their math courses. So we're able to hear from people who've got a year or maybe 2 year or maybe 1 semester to 3 semesters of history with the Co Req. So anyway, just wanted to remind everyone that affinity group attendance is totally voluntary. You can come to one session or many, or as one of the members today said, he was here a few years ago and now he's back. And we want to note the affinity group sponsorship. It's funded by the Minnesota Department of Education, their ABE unit, Adult Education Unit. And the meetings are hosted by the professional development arm for them, which is ATLAS, the Adult Teaching and Learning Advancement System. And today, for example, we have Patsy Egan, who is here with us, and their unit helps us with the technology and the recordings and keeps us on track, basically. So yeah, there's Patsy. Thanks for giving the wave. And then what I'd like to do is just show you the web presence. If you're not aware of it, it's on the Atlas website. And Patsy, this is where you could put the link into the chat if anyone wants to take a look. It has the history, especially the background when we were working with the DevEd ABE partnerships and the resources like the toolkit that was developed, is still there. If you go down to the resources on the bottom, you can see, here's the toolkit. Much of that toolkit is still, I would say, relevant in the Co Req model, especially how to form partnerships and how to sustain partnerships and what are some of the hallmarks of successful partnerships. So having said that, I will return back to the slides. And this is the portion where I'm going to try as best as possible to represent what we heard from Anthony Miller and also some other tidbits of updates that we want to provide to you, especially what happened over the summer. So before I get into the Anthony Miller conversation, I'm going to turn it back to Russ for a minute because he wants to report on the MINAID conference, Minnesota Association for Developmental Education, and adult educators were presenting at that conference this summer. So Russ, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Lesley. Well, this is exciting because this is the first time that adult educators have had the opportunity to engage with Minnesota State faculty and staff at their annual conference. And this was the 30th conference. I believe the theme was had to do something with new directions. And there was this emphasis and this sort of embracing of co-requisite in this conference. And so there were a number of sessions that adult educators were partnered with their Minnesota State partners or others, colleagues in their office, to offer some topical sort of expressions of Co Req experiences, et cetera. And so I'm going to sort of list off some of the topics that were shared at the conference. The first was from ABE to College. That was conducted by the International Institute. We had a Co Req collaborations session in which Metro North and Anoka Ramsey partners were able to share with the group the number of things that they have underway this fall semester. We had another session that was conducted by Brad Haskamp, who is the director of Minnesota Department of Education ABE unit, which involved discovering ABE and how it's funded and sort of how it operates with partnerships, et cetera. We had another one called Tips and Tricks for the Co Req classroom. That was super cool. Again, that was the math faculty at Anoka Ramsey, kind of expressing what their partnership is like involving adult education. And then lastly, we had one which was called Pathways to Possibility, and that was with Southwest State University and the equivalent sort of ABE consortium in that area. So all in all, it was super successful in that, once again, it was that first opportunity for these two groups to be able to come together on behalf of students and helping them be ready for their college experience. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Lesley.
Okay, thanks a lot, Russ. Great report. Yeah, moving along. Here we go. So for those of you who aren't aware, there is a single web page that Minnesota State has on their kind of planning and move to the Co Req format. If you haven't seen this, this is the link you can put into the, give me a second here. Whoops, wrong thing. Yeah, maybe you can put the link in. Oh, is it there? Yeah, there it is. Feel free to take a look. It's a page that talks about the phases, and I would imagine as the phases progress or if timelines change, they might update it. But you can also see who's on the steering committee and so forth. So we haven't shown this in the past, so I thought I would just add this to the mix. But this is, again, for Tony, I know you're coming back to this, and you might know this because you're already faculty in Minnesota State, and I see the math chair as well. By the way, we're always grateful to have Minnesota State folks at these meetings because you can add so much, but having conversations back and forth is very, very resourceful, very valuable. Anyway, we did talk to Tony about the timeline, and the timeline is still what it was as of last spring. However, they're pretty much still in phase one, planning the co-requisite model. However, the faculty groups have moved off of making their recommendations for sort of maybe some common elements for a co-req design. They've also done it by discipline, so there's some variation there. But from what we heard yesterday, there is a fair amount of work going on in a variety of different, in one committee with subcommittees around the workarounds, not the workarounds, wrong word, around the additional services that may be needed. So we'll get into that in a little bit, and I'll probably call on someone to talk about that. But anyway, they're still in phase one. They're hoping to move into phase two probably by the spring semester of this academic year. So still hoping for full implementation by spring of 2028. But when we asked Anthony, I should say, what did he think? How many colleges, what percentage of colleges had some form of co-req teaching going on currently? He said that the majority of the two-year colleges did have something. It might be one course or it might be multiple. It varies, but for sure, it's the math courses are ahead of the game because Math Pathways at Minnesota State began a few years ago. So, and we've had the Math Pathways folks present to these affinity group meetings over the years, and they got off to the Co Req model a little bit sooner. They sort of had a jump start. So that's good news to hear. So regarding the update, and by the way, after I'm finished with this, we're going to allow for anyone who has additional information to offer about what's happening at Minnesota State to add their voice into the mix. So Anthony talked to us about three things. One was what is called the OHE, which is the Office of Higher Education, which is another Minnesota State, not Minnesota State colleges, but it's a Minnesota Um, the state of Minnesota has another agency called OHE. And I'll talk about the history of that in a minute and the significance of it. We'll also talk about course placement through the eyes of Minnesota State and what they've been working on. And then also what amount of professional development is occurring for faculty within Minnesota State who are teaching Co Req or about to teach or are planning to teach. So a little bit of history on the OHE study. We reported this last year that in 2023, the Minnesota legislature did call for a review. I'm going to read this almost directly of Minnesota State's course placement practices. However, it was a little broader than just course placement per se. They wanted the study to encompass issues that, students encounter, and especially the difficulties, of going into dev ed, maybe languishing in dev ed, maybe not pursuing their credit study because they might have dropped out before the dev ed courses were completed, ELL, advising, and so much more. And again, this is just the background, not what Anthony told us about it. So hang on for a moment. Then regarding Minnesota State's Assessment for Course Placement Committee, the ACPC, we reported last year that they had done work on policy modifications during academic year of 2023 and 24. But Anthony told us last year that all that work was put on hold. In other words, the recommendations didn't go forward until they saw what the OHE report would produce. So regarding this OHE report, and this report, if any of you are interested, it was emailed to you last week. Russ sent it out in the email along with the agenda. So you can take a look. It's a very long report. I think it's 100 and some pages, maybe 104, but there is an executive summary in it. So you can glance at that if you're interested. Anyway, the OHE report went to Minnesota State folks. And actually, it was a consulting group that did it. So they completed and sent it to OHE as well as Minnesota State. And according to Anthony, it might go to the legislature. So his opinion was this. He thought it was more informational at this point, but that the recommendations could inform Minnesota State's practices. He said there was a high likelihood that what was contained in that report mirrored what Minnesota State is already doing and that they're in alignment with national standards. So the OHE report was in alignment with national standards, and what Minnesota State is doing is also in alignment. Now, we heard from Matt Dempsey yesterday, who's here today, and I don't want to put you on the spot right now. He said, yeah, they may not be exactly the same, but the overall spirit seems to be pretty similar. And Matt, if you want to add anything later, feel free. So now we're going to the course placement piece. So we've got, again, the OHE report, and then we've got Minnesota State's own policy recommendations, changes on course placement. And he said that, once again, their recommendations were consistent with other state systems, if you look at them, and in alignment with the national practices. They include the full range of possible measures like multiple measures, guided self-placement, GPA. The one thing he noted was, he said that different students are experiencing placement differently depending on which college they go to. And he's still hoping that with this Co Req planning, along with course placement modifications, that there could be more consistency over time. Now, he also mentioned that since this was the same draft policy from the year 23-24, they wanted to go ahead and open it up for another comment, sort of an open comment period later this month, which is now. And I think they've already finished it. I thought I heard Matt say that closed October 15th, especially because it was quite a while since anyone had looked at these policies. And once the results come back, it could go back to the placement committee for some tweaking, and then it'll go up through the same channels that it did before. It will all the way to the chancellor. So the second to the last piece that I have here is, oops, and that has an extra D in there, should be just C. It's about professional development. And any professional development for Minnesota State faculty is being offered through the network. It should be the network for NED, Network for Educational Development. And last spring, a few courses were offered to faculty who are doing teaching or planning to teach Co Req. And we had those facilitators of those courses talk to us last year. And some of you might remember that and what they were doing within their courses. They're offering the same 3 courses, and you can see that it's all around math, some form of a math process or pathway. Now, what is it that they're hoping to do with these courses? Primarily form a learning network, a learning community, so that folks who are teaching or planning can talk about issues, what they're including in the course, explore effective strategies to obviously align the co-requisites with college level course. And I'm not going to cover all of these, but it's interesting to see that these courses are continuing. And if anyone here, I think we have a couple faculty here, if you've been through these courses, we'd like to hear from you today. So the last piece, before we move on to this hearing from people who may be on the committees, I'm going to go back to this for a minute. We heard yesterday, it was interesting. We heard that the wraparound services that are really needed, that planning for that has begun, excuse me. And I heard Matt say, or somebody yesterday said, it's not enough to just have these students enroll in a co-requisite course, right? Without additional services. And of course, there's a lot of concern for those students who are not quite ready to meet college level math, for example, or English or writing. So there were a few people yesterday who said they're on a committee for the wraparound services, and it sounded like there were some breakout ones. The one we heard the most is from one of our members, Zhang. She said they're just planning, they're coming together, they don't have a lot of time, their subcommittee. And it's difficult because every college, has different practices and different possibilities and variations for how those wraparound services could occur. So nothing has come out yet, but they're working on it and hope to develop a set of recommendations by the end of this semester. So having said that, now we want to move into some responses from anybody here who is serving on one of those committees or has more information about that. We're not going to open it up yet for general conversation around who's doing what in Co Req, how it's working, or general questions. Because as soon as we're done with this segment, which is in about 10 minutes, we're going to have a half an hour for all the rest of that conversation. So I'm going to I'm going to stop sharing. Give me a second to get back in here. Stop share. There we go. Yeah. So as we say, is anybody on our call today, on our meeting, who's been part of it? We know, Matt, you have been. Is there anyone else who's been part of the planning efforts for Minnesota State?
And you could just unmute yourself or,
Oh,
yes.
no, I'm on. Oh, yeah, for Matt. Okay. Yeah, still muted, Matt.
Oh, I was waiting to see if anybody else wanted to jump in. So
Oh,
Yeah.
aren't you
Thank
kind?
you
yeah,
for
so
that, Matt.
I've been on the Dev Ed steering committee for quite a while, and we've just to give you a quick update where we are. I kind of went through with some the biggest set of what they're calling recommended parameters for how to do co-requisites. Has gone through the in-state process. Had some questions raised, came back, we looked at that. So it's kind of back in that second time through and waiting for that to be, I think, I would say just finalized. but I don't expect any major changes. But even within that document, then I think Lesley, you alluded to the concerns around wraparound supports. That was specifically sort of pushed down the road a little bit. So there's a group working on that right now, and I'm not on that group. So speaking specifically to what they're talking about, I can't do that terribly well. But I know they're doing a lot of research right now, both internally, what's going on at different colleges and universities within the Minnesota state system, as well as looking at what other entities outside of the state of Minnesota are doing. And then the other group that's working on that, because it is kind of a different animal, is our career and technical programs. Many of them have needs for students to review, do work that is below the college level, which we would have called developmental at one point in time. Not sure if that's the right word anymore, but there isn't a college level course to pair with those. So trying to move into a co-requisite model doesn't always fit well. So the trick is then to figure out how we might do that. So we're looking at some of the different options that are there. So that's kind of where we're at right now, waiting for those two groups, the technical and wraparound support groups, to finish up their work hopefully this fall, and then maybe we'll have a little more complete picture of what the system is going to be putting out as its direction on how to do co-requisites well, I guess.
That's great. You know, Matt, I just comment that yesterday we had a couple of attendees, Jan May for one, and let's see, it was, bear with me, had her name written down here yesterday, Anna Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And they are interested in doing some further sort of digging and communicating with adult education. And so we're going to get something arranged for this to help them kind of inform their process here of coming up with recommendations. And as Lesley mentioned earlier, those recommendations for wraparound are kind of due here yet this fall semester. So there is a bit of urgency for us to sort of have this conversation with them. But rest assured, we will be doing that. And Matt, I think we'd be including you in that conversation.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like I said, I think some of our, we heard about Pine Tech yesterday at the meeting, and Anoka Ramsey, and there seems to be a lot of existing relationships there. So there's a lot of understanding of how both sides of the equation here work. But at other institutions, not so much. And so we definitely need to inform ourselves so that we can, best design a workable, and I think the word that was used yesterday frequently was sustainable model for this cooperation between whatever we're doing on our campuses and ABE. So
Yeah.
very
Thanks
helpful.
for that, Matt. Yeah, that hit it on the head right there. And what I was just most impressed with was this real desire to do some proactive work on the front side here so that those recommendations reflected those best practices and or desired practices. And so we'll be moving full speed ahead into that. So I
Great.
think, yep.
Well, I think, yeah, I'm going to just share again what we'd like to do. And thank you, Matt. What we'd like to do is segue into the next segment, which is a conversation, and to hear from those of you who are involved in Co Req in some way. Russ will facilitate that. So let me just share, give me one more moment to share a slide. Of course, I'm on here we go. Let me get to the right one. So we have an open discussion, and Patsy, if you're, well, no, you won't. I'll put it into the chat. What we'd like to do is have this conversation, and Russ will pose it, updates from the field, we call it, from anyone who's teaching or involved in planning Co Req courses. What's happening, and we, not just what's happening, what courses are you teaching, but if you've been doing this now for a semester or 2 or 3, what lessons have you learned so far? You know, what significant practices are you identifying, or are you tweaking things? And so after that, we're going to open it up and have general discussion for anyone who wants to contribute. So I will put this question into the chat and stop sharing. Sorry, I didn't go into full screen mode. Give me a second. I guess I wasn't sharing, was I?
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Here's
there
where
it
it
is.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
so sorry about that.
Yeah, Lesley
Okay.
already put those questions in the chat, so I think
Oh,
we're
thanks so much,
no
Patsy.
problem.
Okay. Yep, you're ahead of me. Okay, well, let me stop sharing. And there we go. And Russ, take it away.
Yeah. Thank you, Lesley. I think for the purposes of discussion, we have to keep in mind that people are at all a variety of stages of this, right? As we heard earlier from Anthony's report, there are a number of campuses that are kind of all in. They're just deeply into this. There's some that haven't quite begun in terms of offering a particular Co Req classroom experience. However, you might be, or they might be in the stage of planning and getting together and beginning this process of figuring out how are they going to go about this this offering of the Co Req format. And so as you are thinking about the status of where you're at, we're interested just to hear from you about where what you're experiencing and how far into this are you. What kind of courses are you doing it in? Math, reading, writing, what does that look like? And so I think for the purposes of this part, since this is the engagement piece, you're welcome to come on screen and to open up, of course, the audio when you are speaking so that we can hear directly from you. So who would like to get us started with what you have going on your campus? Tony, are you comfortable getting us started with Normandale?
Sure. Hang on, you can't see me. Not, believe it or not, that is not a Halloween wig. So
welcome, Tony.
Thank you. We at Normandale, and Tony Dunlop, chair of the math department at Normandale, and we've been offering co-requisite courses for our so-called gateway college level courses, which would be Introduction to Statistics and College Algebra. They are currently so the college level courses have always been 4 credits at Normandale. They may be different at other colleges, but we've always had them at 4 credits. And the associated co-requisite courses are 3 credits. No, I'm sorry, 2 credits. Just as a bit of an aside, based on recent information we've been getting from the system, the conversation in our college has been, are we going to need to increase the co-requisite from 2 credits to 3 if Div Ed goes away? So that's just a little bit of information. But okay, so what we've been doing, I was not part of any of the development teams, and I have not been teaching any of the courses. So that caveat, this is sort of from an outsider looking in, but we had teams back mapping, there we go. Back mapping from the college level courses to, you know, what people who have been teaching those courses for years need students to know when they come in. And we developed the co-requisite courses based on that. Placement into the co-requisite courses is now largely done internally through our existing developmental ed course. And just, I think it was early this semester, it might have been late in the spring. We don't have a lot of data yet because this is only our 5th semester running the co-requisite courses, but we did have our institutional research team take a look at how students have been in terms of pass rate, right? What percentage of students earned a C or better in the college level course in the co-requisite versus the standalone placed directly into college algebra and stats. And the pass rates were comparable. Not noticeably better, not noticeably smaller, but so at least we're not doing any worse with the co-requisites. We are a little concerned about what happens when developmental education goes away, but
Yeah.
that's not, I don't think that's the purpose of this conversation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it is in the sense of we believe that's a fairly large group of students, right? Or could be.
It's getting smaller, but yeah.
Yeah, yep. And so, yes, I think there certainly is concern, and it certainly has a bearing on perhaps what happens with that wraparound, some of those wraparound pieces as well. When you talk about completion rates, what is that? What is that percentage that
I don't,
you're
I'd have
holding
to,
firm to?
I'd have to dig out the spreadsheet. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay, got it. So, so that's the latest there, and that's in the area of math only, pretty much?
Yeah, I don't know anything about English.
Okay, got it. And we have a question from Julie. Tony, do students take developmental education and then move into the co-req?
As far as I know, I'm not aware of any external placement that we currently have in place into the co-requisite courses.
Mhm.
I could be wrong. I'd have to talk to admissions, but I don't think we have any external, acuplacer
yeah.
or
Placement
even
diagnostics or
even like
something.
GPA. I don't think
Yeah.
we've developed that yet. Maybe Matt knows differently.
Yep, was just going to say that that task, whether and if yes, what would it be, has been handed off to the assessment for course placement committee, and there are 2 groups, one for math and one for English and writing and reading, working on that as we speak. So while we have a placement model that places students directly into college level courses, anything outside of that is currently college by college, university by university, but there's some discussions going on whether we should have some guidance or even requirements that would be system-wide.
Yeah.
That helps.
So you'd have sort of a universal approach to it.
Yep.
Yeah. Got it.
And our concern is about the so-called floors for placement into the gateway courses. And the latest I've heard, and again, this is a little outside the purview of this meeting, but the latest I've heard is that we will be permitted to have a standalone basic algebra class to prepare for college algebra co-req, but nothing for statistics. So we're trying, that's why we're thinking about expanding the co-req from two courses, 2 credits to 3.
And then Juliet asked, would the floors be universal across campuses?
I think Matt knows more about that than I do.
Yeah.
That will still have to be worked out in the process. That is certainly one of the big questions as to whether it would be recommended or required. So very much an open question there. So
Got it. And there's value in that, obviously, is students move from maybe one campus to another or want to take coursework, corresponding coursework virtually or what have you. Okay, so anything more to add at this stage, Tony or Matt, regarding that update?
This might be more appropriate for general discussion, but hang on, can't see me. We are very much interested in having ABE support on campus. I was on a campus-wide developmental ed and placement committee before and in the early stages of the pandemic. And at that time, that conversation was going on, and what we were hearing from Metro South ABE, which serves Bloomington, is that they just don't have the staff for that.
Hmm,
So we're
interesting.
wondering if that's still the case. We don't know.
All right. So what I can help with is a little bit of outreach to our person who has been involved in the affinity group in the past. And I'm going to just put it down here so that I can kind of help with that connection. All right there, Tony?
Thank you. That would be helpful.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so thank you, Tony, and thank you, Matt. Other updates. And don't be shy, just tell us a little bit more about what you've got going on, ranging from, oh, we're just starting to talk about it, or we're kind of awaiting an invitation to yeah, we're actually in a classroom together and this is what we're doing.
I'm a writing tutor.
Signa?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi Signa, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great, thank
Okay.
you.
So I am a writing tutor in Inver Hills, but I go into one of the Co Reqs once a week to help the students. And one thing that I've noticed, in part just like through working with this faculty member and talking to students who are in these Co Reqs and also talking to faculty, one concern I have is that all of the English instructors teach the composition class all students have to take so differently. So that's an issue. So how would that affect Co Reqs? And I've noticed a great deal of difference in how Co Req teachers teach Co Reqs. Some are very active, some are much more passive, where it seems to be like a lot of the time is just giving the students time to work, but I'm not sure how
Versus
much help
guiding
students
them.
are actually
Yeah.
getting in learning how to do the work. And I'm just wondering if this is something others have noticed, and if the groups that are working with recommendations or work, trying to develop protocols, policies, whatever you want, recommendations, if that's something that they're going to put into the mix or consider, because the differences I see in the English class curriculum, they are so different. I do not even think they should have the same course name and number, because what the work that students do is so different. So that I think is an issue. And I think when the colleges are deciding who is going to teach the Co Reqs, I don't think I think it should be teachers who really want to. And I think it should be the teachers who actually really teach students how to write, not just give them assignments.
Mm.
So, and I don't
Gotcha.
know what anybody else has observed, but that's what I see as a tutor. And,
Right.
and I'm not sure a Co Req model is going to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm. So Signa, you've got sort of a varied background here, right? Because
right, yeah.
you are working on a college campus, plus you are an adult education practitioner, right?
Right. And I
So
came from K-12 as well. So I've taught kindergarten through adults.
Right.
Yeah.
So that sort of that methodology that's sort of similar makes sense to you, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I just see, because of my schedule, when I go into work with the students in that Co Req, I miss the first part. But what I notice is that when I go in, usually like the instructor will have a specific student that I will work with. And we often go like out in the hall where we can sit and talk and not disturb others. But it just seems to be on his computer. And maybe that's when he's providing feedback. But I think if I were teaching that and I'd be giving students time to work, I would be at least everyone, I would get up and walk around and I would monitor
Yeah.
and, because given this, all the skills the students have and do not have, and because they vary so much, there needs to be a lot of individualization, and just giving students time in class to work is important because a lot of them are very busy and they don't, and one of the things they need help with is figuring out how to get everything done. But just additional time to work, that's not enough. And that to me is not the purpose of a Co Req. Then you just might just as well call it a study table or a study hall. But
Mhm.
again, so these are just my thoughts as a grading tutor.
Got it.
Just things I've observed.
Got it. Now, Matt, you had a comment. Do you want to just speak to it?
Sure, and I'm not going to say your name right. Is it Signe? Is that how you?
Signa, yeah. If you speak Norwegian and Swedish, it's Signa, and in Danish, it's Sina. So take your pick.
All right. Yeah, the question is, will we make these sort of required so that every college and university has to do it the same way, or will they be recommendations, or maybe there'll be limitations that you can be this high but no higher? It's really tough to get 33 different institutions to all kind of think the same way. So that's why it's typically been very varied. In addition, we are all 33 are separately accredited institutions, so they are independent. And then, of course, in higher education, there's a very much higher protection of academic freedom and things like that, and how, hearing you talk about how one instructor approaches a course versus another. So it gets really complicated when we try to standardize anything. And so that's why these are really tricky questions when we're trying to do anything at a across the whole Minnesota state system kind of thing. So that's where we'll at least start with recommendations and best practices. That's where relying on NED that Lesley noted with really good professional development is helpful. And as you said, really ensuring that at least as we start with this, and we've seen the same thing in other areas like online teaching, if you make people teach in ways that they're not comfortable doing, they often, at least to start with, don't do a very good job of it, just because that's just not where their comfort is. So we've got lots of hurdles to overcome.
Yeah.
Can
Good.
maybe
Thank you.
Man, I'm going to add something. Sorry, I'm taking my hat off as facilitator and as a former Minnesota State employee for 18 years and a faculty member for 25 years, other lifetime. Yeah, Matt mentioned online. Matt was involved, but I was the early director in online learning and trying to get faculty to move over to that and teach. I mean, the worst of the faculty, sorry to say, were the ones who put all of their slides and all of their papers up on a website and said that's a class, and it was no better than a correspondence class, right? So we have similar things, but what I'm hoping is, I know that after full implementation, Minnesota State, and Matt, you can help me out here, is supposed to be doing an evaluation, about how it's all going. I mean, we're talking about a rigorous study, but I'm hoping they'll find similar parallels that we did, which is I became involved with somebody. We set up the first ever sort of quality matrix, if you will, for some of the elements for best teaching in online. And so I think that it might take time to evolve, but it's a sad state when I hear a story like that. It's a very sad state. Thankfully, there's a mix of faculty. There are star performers. We have many of them on the Affinity group here and yesterday, and they're the ones championing for good quality education for these students. But, how many faculty are there in Minnesota State with 33 institutions? I forget, like 5,000,
Oh.
So if you're going to bring, let's say 1,000 people or fewer, let's say 500 faculty into the Co Req model, how many of them will be stellar right out of the gate? So there'll have to be some learning here, and there'll have to be some outcome feedback as well for pass rates. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. I don't know if it helped at all, but I wish we heard better stories than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And And I also have another comment, and but I don't want to be a Zoom hog here.
You're doing just fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I bring up placement every time, and I know placement comes up, but I have another story, and I really think that Min State, yes, we should use multiple measures, but I think often what happens at my institution, they look at one. So a student came to me in the writing center, because we also help students with reading, and she said, I'm really struggling to read. She's a second language student who came like age for 6th grade. She never learned phonics. And her reading level, her independent reading level, I guess, is probably about 3rd, 4th grade. Because she said, I want to improve. I said, well, I can help you with phonics. Would you be willing to do an assessment? So I used the Words Their Way assessment. And part of the reason I knew that she really was struggling is because she came to get help with understanding an assignment. And we were taking turns reading it aloud, talking about what she had to do. And every time she came to a multi-syllable word, she did the look at the first few letters and make her best guess. And then we had just a conversation. She was very honest and open about, and I asked her, did you learn phonics? She said,
What's
no.
that?
Yeah. Yeah, she said, what's that? And so she never had like a 504, any like special accommodations in high school, but still our accessibility director is great. So I actually talked with her and the student the other day, because she's going to help her with getting access to any like text reading and other tools that all students have access to. She also gave her the names of 3 colleges where people can get reading certificates or degrees in reading, and they have to do field work. And so in the meantime, if she's willing to come in a couple, 2-3 times a week, I'm trying to give her a crash course in phonics between now and I retire in February, trying to be very systematic. But to me, having the student place like in 1108, and she's also, the assignment she wanted help with is understanding a final essay for her biomedical ethics class. And she told me the only way she's been coping by putting the topics into AI and reading that and writing that down. And I'm not sure if that's helping her much. And accessibility director said, no, do not use AI. That will not help you learn what you need to learn.
Right.
But how is a student getting placed in college level courses when their like independent reading level is so far from the college reading level? And
Right.
I think she's smart, she's bilingual, and I think she found ways of coping. And I've also heard from many students the past few years coming out of COVID, a lot of high school students to graduate did not need to do much reading or writing. But so again, it's this placement issue. But then I got this idea, and I would not be the person to do it. But what if there were an introduction to linguistics class that would include the full English phonics, that would give college credit, but would help fill the gaps for these students? So you'd have to have someone. I've actually asked would I be qualified to teach the community college level. It's ESL. But I was thinking students need a phonics class, and not just second language. We have a lot of first language speakers because of whole language or whatnot who do not know phonics, and it really impedes their reading and writing. And I think the colleges should offer phonics, and I think it should be given college credit, maybe an 8-week course, but maybe it could be part of like an intro to linguistics class. That was just an idea I had the other day.
Yeah, that's
But
fantastic.
we get so many students, because every once in a while I get a student coming to the writing center who always has really good writing skills they want to improve. Most of the time students are really struggling, and so students are really struggling, and there needs to be something done. And Patty, I just saw your email, and there are times when I and instructors will talk to students about maybe taking a break from the community college and going back to ABE, or every once in a while, we even have students who will do both, because if a student is below college level in one area, they can qualify. And so that's why I think collaboration between ABE and the community college is so good. But it's just so sad when you see a student in this situation and you're trying to fill these big gaps. And so I'm really hoping with this Co Req work that things will be put in place so that this just won't happen anymore. Because, and I would mention these things to my previous supervisor. She's now at another college. So, well, you know, sometimes still people get through, but to me, it's like a medical error. You don't want them to ever happen, and you want to change things so they don't happen. Yeah, because I just see this every single it's at least one case like this every single semester. And to me, that is a sign that the system is not working. At least that's my opinion.
Reactions to that, to Cigna's comments and concerns? I see some in chat. Is there
Yeah.
anyone that wants to speak to that? You know, just personally?
I would just add that we at Atlas do a great deal around exactly what you're describing in order to prepare teachers. So, you know, we have a long history of basic and emergent literacy, including phonics and phonological awareness and such, in a large resource library that I'm sure you're familiar with. That's what we do. That is a core piece of adult basic education. So it seems odd that there would be another agency trying to do something that is already very, very effectively done elsewhere.
Yeah, and that in to that point, Patsy, it sort of illustrates the value of the partnership, right? Of having the potential partnership is that that's a strength set of adult educators. And so bringing that into the equation and being able to strategically determine how that occurs within the classroom experience is critical. And so that's the type of stuff that I think our two folks yesterday were trying to sort of get at in some of their questionings or concerns about not only just wraparound, but what is happening within the classroom itself that addresses that very concern. Okay, so we are at 12 o'clock. We have a couple more minutes. Let's see, Christina, thank you. Thank you for raising your hand. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was just going to talk a little bit about, I'm at Anoka Ramsey. We're going full force on ABE, or on Co Reqs. We've got ABE embedded Co Reqs for our stats, liberal arts, and college algebra.
Yes.
And I can talk more on that, but I wanted to hit on the reading just a little bit, because I think we have what might be a kind of unique setup. So we see I agree, like their reading skills are poor. Not all of them, some of them. There is a need for reading support. And so we actually took reading faculty from our campus and embedded them into our statistics and liberal arts math, and have had some success there. In particular, as a math faculty, I am not good at assessing a student's reading skills. And so I think just having the reading expert there to say, to identify the students who would benefit from something has really been, it doesn't so much help like in my class, but it helps us to identify students who might need additional support in a different kind of way. So I just kind of wanted to share that we're having success with it. It took us a little bit to figure out what we were doing, but now that we figured it out, it does seem to be helping. And I suspect that the reading need will continue as our kind of COVID babies come through. So
Yeah,
I just wanted
Christina,
to share that.
Yeah, Christina, in a nutshell, how do you operationalize that? How does it happen?
So our reading faculty comes in. We started, the idea was that they would come in 8 times, like every other week. What we found is that it's actually better to do it based off the content. So maybe it's, 3 weeks in a row and then not for a bit, and then but so the reading faculty is listed as an instructor on the course. They get 1 credit of release time,
To do
or
it, to be
1
part of
credit.
this. Yep.
Yep, to pay, which it is expensive. You can run a pretty quick return on investment, and show that it's better if we keep the student. And so then, but then the reading faculty actually just takes, so statistics and college algebra just involve more reading. And so and it's been fascinating to learn, because I don't, I mean, I know how to read, but I don't know how to teach reading. Like I don't like it, so I end up learning so much about what it is to read, in particular to read math, which is completely different than like just reading, right? Which I never thought of. For instance, there is not context in math, right? So like you can't use context clues to read a math problem if there's no context, if it's just the math problem. And so what we did is our reading faculty, who are very good and know what they're doing, took our assignments, like our tests and our homework assignments, and designed reading assignments off of our math assignments. So to teach the students to read the math.
Mhm.
And they do it wonderfully and far better than I ever would, because it's not my area.
Right. Makes perfect sense. Thank you, Christine. Appreciate that. Let's see, I want to make sure I've added you to our list here of attendees. Okay, so we are at a stage. Thank you all for your sharing and your offers of information. We really appreciate it. And your challenges and concerns. That's that kind of stuff that we need to hear about, so that we can pass that along, or we can engage more deeply about it. With that, I think I'm going to ask Lesley to return to the screen, and we'll kind of wrap today's meeting up.
Okay. Great conversation. Yeah, we have sort of some final comments, and we wanted to be sure everyone knew where to find the next meetings and how to register. So again, this would be a link in the chat. Let me open the chat. There, oh, you're so on it, Patsy. And by the way, we really want to send a shout out to Atlas for all the help that they've been for these series of meetings. So thank you. We have a question for you. I mean, we think anytime we have these sessions, conversation ensues, and we could probably do another half an hour. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're targeting or focusing in on what you want to learn, or what you want to know, or what you want to be able to share. So are there any topics of interest for future meetings? We know that we'll stay on top of the release of any course placement policies or recommendations that come out, if they or as they come out. But anything else, either in the chat, or do you want to speak up now? We have just, a few minutes before 11:15. What else would you like to hear covered if you haven't heard about it?
Hi, Tony Dunlop again from Normandale. This is more along the lines of like I'm trying to avoid the word fantasy, but if we could, if we could, so this fall 2007 implementation of the new structure with little to no standalone developmental ed courses. I can tell you what so we talked about this a lot in our department meeting earlier this week. We would love to have some kind of a seamless connection when students come to us not even knowing pre-algebra.
Mhm.
So we can't in good conscience place them. That's what always gets left out. Oh, we place students too low. Well, placement is a moral issue, among other things. So we have students who we cannot in good conscience place into a class we don't think they're ready for. Have something on campus, probably through ABE, that is in conversation with the Co Req faculty so that the students have a more or less seamless experience
Yeah, the
coming to
bridge.
Normandale,
Yeah.
not even ready for the Co Reqs. That's my fantasy. So I'm dreaming here.
Mhm. Yeah, you're really speaking about this sort of this sort of bridge that sort of is strategic, that moves them from these low level sort of skills to get the interventions and the supports they need to
Yeah, and
actually get to a stage potentially where they can either leap over the Co Req or be ready for the Co Req, right?
yeah, yeah, and yeah. Oh, never mind. I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah. Go ahead, Christina. Yes.
Oh, I was just going to say something that I would love to talk about that I haven't heard. I heard briefly mentioned today, but I haven't heard a lot of information on. Is so we have a very robust partnership with our ABE on my campus. That we do have a pre-algebra class that ABE teaches. And what we are finding is that we are running out of staffing. Our need of ABE is outpacing ABE's ability
Of
to staff and
capacity.
fund.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I've not heard a lot of like, do we have a plan for that? Because if all of a sudden all these institutions start going, oh, we're going to have ABE, from where? And what is the plan to kind of, because I also know that I've worked enough with ABE to know that their funding lags a little bit. And so growing quickly is difficult with ABE's funding model. And so is there a plan there? I would love to kind of, maybe there is a plan and I just don't know it, but I'd love to learn about it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a plan. However, it does not mean that there could not be some type of exploration and a plan that comes from that. But we have to understand sort of the desire of Minnesota State to have adult basic education involved. And then there'd have to be obviously some discussions at the state level about what can the system do to support individual consortia to maybe ramp up their capacity in some way. I mean, you're right, the funding formula, and Julie, maybe you could speak to this if I assume you're still here, Julie. Let me look here. Julie, when you hear about Christina's sort of question, what comes to mind for you?
Well, a lot of things come to mind. But I was thinking like I could talk about the capacity, how many teachers we have, a little bit about the funding formula. We do need to serve a certain number of learners in order to make it financially viable to host those type of classes and co-recs. And not all ABE programs across the state can actually take on this kind of work.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
You know, this very same question came up yesterday, a little less so in terms of capacity, but more in terms of the funding model. We heard faculty say we don't understand it. It makes it difficult. You know, some folks weren't aware that it was student contact hours and that they're funded a year behind. You know, next year they get paid for their hours this year. And so Matt was here yesterday. A group of us stayed on after 11:15 as well, talking about this. But the question is what would be an appropriate venue for this information to get presented? We know that, to be honest, probably 75% of the participants are ABE at these meetings. And how to reach more people in Minnesota State who would have the same questions. And is that an appropriate If you could talk about it, Julie, would it be at this meeting? Would it be somewhere else?
Webinar.
Or maybe, and I can talk to Matt and also Larry Hanlon. I mean, we do have some avenues to get, to reach Minnesota faculty and maybe administrators a little more deeply, like a webinar. You know, maybe we could ask our partners to distribute the information and we come up with a date for something like that. So that we're not just talking to 4 people yesterday and 3 people today who, you know, that's a total of 7. That's my informal count of how many were from Minnesota State. So yeah, maybe we should noodle on this. Matt, I know you've got plenty of work to do, but maybe we could just have a 15-minute conversation at some point with you if you've got ideas about it, or maybe we ask Larry Hanlon to join us because he's been a partner within the system office on this, you know, something like that, if that would be useful.
I think so. And I think maybe we, just to go back to what Russ talked about at the very beginning of this, maybe we can get everybody together in person at the MinAid conference, and do some real work on it there as well. That could definitely be a focus. I will also, I'll throw Jan May under the bus, but I know that she and MinAid are looking at doing some kind of a larger grant funding thing, and I kind of have to be careful here because I'm on the board that actually funds the grants. It's a Education Minnesota Foundation grant, but that might be a great way to access some resources to help make this happen too, because it's talking not only about how we do things, but it may even involve, you know, who knows, talking to the legislature and talking about how these sorts of things all work together. Because when we're talking about these two somewhat siloed entities here trying to work together, that always makes it a little trickier, right?
Right. That's
Yep,
true.
and I can say, just to address Lesley, what you were saying, I agree. It would be nice to have like more Minnesota State. There's a lot of individuals in the AVE field who do not understand this as well, though. So it never hurts to deliver the same message to the adult
Yeah.
education field as
Okay.
well.
Yeah, well, maybe we do focus on it for the affinity group meeting, but then find a larger audience as a webinar somehow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. Well, listen, let's just take the next step, which is, when do we next gather this group? And Lesley, I don't know if you can pull up that slide, but or get us back to that Atlas page. But what we want to comment before we leave today is the next time we gather is the 15th and the 16th of January, I believe. So if we go down that page, you'll all see that, yes, there's the next set of options for people to gather in the winter. And you have to pre-register like you did today, and then you'll get your link to the meeting. And so with that, I think we're at our time. And I would just like to say, wonderful discussion. Thank you for coming today. And yeah, this is a big deal to get this figured out, right? There's a lot at stake to make sure that, especially those students that are not likely to be successful in Co Req, how can we help them to be more likely to succeed? And then those that are so far removed from that, what's the answer? What's the answer for them, right? And I'm delighted to see that all of us have that concern. So with that, I think we'll bid you all farewell. Well, thank you for coming. Have yourself a great weekend, and you know, get yourself a few Halloween treats. Why not? This is the time of year to enjoy all of that.